Hello dudes and dudettes, I'm back with another video, and this time I took all the time I need for this one. This one will be full of edits and different clips. But enough of that, let's get into the actual video. And this one's going to be kind of a follow-up to my Splatoon 3 video if you have not seen it. It's actually been my most viewed video other than my Sonic related ones, so huge thanks to that. And for my next few videos, when I'm writing the script, I'm going to try and use more bullet points here and there depending on how long this video lasts. But I want to try and make each one I talk about last at least a minute so I can get to the 7-minute mark on average for each video. But now that we got that out of the way, we can get into Splatoon 3. I mean, you picked this video for a reason. All I'm really doing is stalling. So without further ado, let's get into my Splatoon 3 tips and tricks that I really don't see enough people talking about. And it starts with tip number 1. Take fights when you have the ink advantage. And this tip is only really applied to Splatoon, where your range of movement is decided by how much of you and your teammates' ink is on the ground, and it can really make or break whether you win a fight or not. For example, if you have a full area of ink covered, and the enemy runs up and shoots through the ink, if you have the majority of that turf ink, you can easily just move around your opponent and force their camera to keep up with you, which can give you a higher chance of getting a splat and covering the enemy tracks. But that's just one example. Let me show you another. It is when you are in the middle of the battlefield and you have enough ink on the ground to move, but you're still limited by the enemy team being able to do the same thing to you. And this is where the uniqueness of your weapon shows. For example, I've played with the Splatoon and the Spider Shot Pro, and I had vastly different areas of success with these weapons. Although I cannot say that one weapon is better than the other, despite both being blasters, they are clearly meant for different things. For starters, the Splatoon has a short range compared to the blasters like the Spider Shot Jr., Spider Shot, and Spider Shot Pro. But the high fire rates make up for that by giving you a lot of space to move around in order to strafe around your opponent, or just move around the map in general. Now, it may seem that this weapon is very good by how I'm describing it, but it's imperative to keep in mind that this blaster is not well suited to fight long-range weapons like snipers, or even the Spider Shot Pro itself, at face-to-face combat. For example, the Spider Shot Pro is good for long range, but is too slow to give the player any movement, but it can be used for attacking rather than movement, which leads me into my next tip. Tip number 2. Flank your opponents. Now at first, it may sound like a simple thing to do, but there is so much more that goes into this and how it can help you and your team win. So say you and the enemy team are at a standstill, and neither one can get past one another. In these situations, what you want to try and do is get out of combat, or hide if you're being targeted. Find or make a path around the enemy and splat them. I know this may seem obvious, and even though I'm tired of hearing it as well, I would not be talking about it if this was not as effective as other people say it is. And there are many ways this can be pulled off. You can make a path to the enemy base and capitalize on the spots of ink that the enemy team fails to cover, either when they respawned or when they first started the game. And you can use these spots to flank around the enemy team without being seen. Although I do not have any example clips of this specific thing happening, ways that you can see this happen in Turf War or Ranked mode is done through splat hopping or splat swimming. Tip number 3. Know how to use your special. Splatoon can be just as much of a hero game like Overwatch, as well as your everyday FPS game like Call of Duty or Halo. And the ultimate you have for your weapon alone can drive this point home by showing how versatile Splatoon is for everyone in whatever role they play. For instance, the Wavebreaker is a good support to get enemies off your back and to give your teammates a breather and more space to work with. The Trizuka is a great way to pick off opponents from long distances, effectively making you a sniper, along with whatever weapon you have that comes equipped with this ultimate. Knowing when to use their abilities is important since it can be a major factor that wins a game or not, and this greatly is true in ranked where keeping your team alive is imperative to get the necessary edge in battle. And last but not least, tip number 4. Checking the map and being aware of enemies. Now I'm pretty sure this is not the first video that you've seen where someone tells you to check the map, and don't get me wrong, it is important to look at the map and be aware of the enemies and important points on the map, but in actual gameplay, it's not realistic to check your map in the middle of combat or when enemies are around you. What you should try to do is check the map either when you die, when you're hidden, or when you're about to super jump. In these moments, you're given a short breather, and these are points where you're going to be out of combat the longest. But like I said before, this is important, but it's only half the puzzle because you still need to be generally aware of the enemies around you as you're fighting. But thankfully, since this is Splatoon 3, it's a bit more simpler to do that, since all you really need to know is that wherever you see enemy ink, there may be an enemy, but you only really need to worry about that when you're fighting in the middle of the battlefield for control. But never underestimate where this can pop up in similar areas. But anyways, dudes and dudettes, those have been my Splatoon 3 tips and tricks. Leave a like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but anyways, thanks for sticking around. And I hope you get to watch some more videos later on.